Imposter syndrome, perfectionism, investing in ourselves, these are just some of the subjects that I covered in today's episode with Aneta Kuzma, a coach and consultant that's standing for people's transformational change. You're going to love this interview. Welcome to the Courage to Be podcast. I'm your host, Tanya Vasallo. And each week, I will bring you amazing guests so that you can tap into the courage to break out of old patterns and live your soul's purpose. Before we get into this episode, if by the end you enjoyed it, please follow, rate, review, and share the podcast so we can reach more people. Because here's the thing, I'm on a mission to close the gender gap in the podcasting world so that more and more women's voices are heard. If you feel that this is something you value too, then please take action by rating, reviewing, following, and sharing the podcast. We can only do this together. Check out the link in the show notes to see how this is done. And make sure to stay until the end to claim some free gifts I have for you. Welcome back to the Courage to Be, where we have powerful conversations to transform your life and your business. And today we have Aneta Kuzma with us. Welcome, Aneta.
Oh, Tanya, I'm so excited to be here with you. Thank you.
I know, we were just chatting a little bit right before the podcast record, and I'm like, no, we have to hit record because the energy that we're creating with this is just amazing. It's fabulous. I'm so excited to have Aneta here with us. Share with us a little bit with our audience, the work that you're doing, because you are a stamp for transformation and for people's change, people's transformation. And How did you arrive here? What's your journey?
Oh my gosh. Well, I'll tell you what I'm doing and then I'll backtrack and share a little bit about my journey. So I am a coach. I actually am certified in life, executive, and also health and wellness coaching. I also am certified yoga, meditation, and breathwork facilitator. And I also do wellness consulting for companies. And so I really wanted to create a business that combined all of my passions and all the things that I believe in as a practitioner and also participant, and be able to share that with others. And I didn't come to this place on a straight road. Many times the road and the journey that we take is not a straight line. So I did do the traditional route. I was a corporate executive for many years. I was in the corporate world for 25 years, about 22 in banking. And in my 40s, I just got this itch to really spend some time in examination and reflection of what do I want to do from now until retirement? What does this look like for myself? And I got honest and recognized it wasn't going to be sort of doing what I've done up until that point. It served me well in my career. I don't regret any of it, but I really hired a coach to work on what I wanted to do. And that's how I started my business about 4.5 years ago. And I haven't looked back since.
That is fascinating. So you said something important, that you hired a coach. And I think that's such a great point to emphasize on, because many times we come to these crossroads in our life, like you said, you've been in corporate for 22 years. Maybe we want change. We want something different. Maybe we're midlife and we're like, is this everything there is to my life? And we want that shift. But I'd be curious from your perspective, how do you feel being able to do this on your own versus having hired someone to support you? In this case, it was a coach. Do you think you would have arrived at this place without a coach or no?
I don't think so. Or if I did, I think it would have taken much longer. I think if I hired a coach sooner, I would have had a game plan much sooner as well. And I just have always believed that it's important to make the investment in yourself and to hire people who are a few steps ahead of you, who've already done the work, who have already invested in themselves, who've gotten the education, the training. It's so much easier because I've read up until that point so many self-help books. I've listened to podcasts. I spent time internally trying to think through, what does this look like? What do I do next? And I never would have been able to do what I was able to do with a coach in 6 months. I mean, it just was amazing for me to see the transformation before start to finish.
That is so fascinating. So first I'll ask you, why is it so hard for women to invest in themselves? And then I want to follow up with your coach journey.
Oh my gosh, such a great question, Tanya. One, because I think we practice putting ourselves last. And especially when I was investing in myself, there's always someone else that you think of first. If you're a mother, you think about investing in your children. If you're a partner, you think about, your partner and maybe life goals and commitments that you have together. Or you think about work obligations and will there be time left over for me? Because it's always the leftovers, right? We don't necessarily put ourselves first. So I think that that's just part of what we do. And then I think the second that I decided that I was going to do the investment, then I felt such relief because I saw the progress. I saw that the return on the investment so quickly, but I didn't have practice putting myself first. I didn't have really good practice investing in myself, to be honest.
Yeah, I want to dissect a little bit this concept of investing in ourselves because
Yeah.
I think sometimes when we get presented with a possibility, to change
Mm-hmm.
our life, whether
Mm-hmm.
it's signing up for a class, signing up to work with a coach, a consultant,
Yeah.
something like that, we see it as a cost more than an investment.
Yes.
So
Oh my
that's where I
gosh.
want to tease that out a little
Hmm.
bit. Share with me a little bit. How were you feeling stuck at that point?
Hmm.
What was the fear of hiring this coach or the
Hmm.
investment, or how did you shift that? Were you seeing it as an investment or were you seeing it as a cost and then you saw it as an investment? And what was the transformation in that time working with your coach? Because you said in 6 months already you saw so much change.
Yeah, great question. So the first part is I did have fears and I put it off for a long time. My fear was, what if it doesn't work out? What if I spend all this money? Because I did see it as a cost, not as an investment initially. What if it doesn't work out? What if I can't figure it out? What if I stay where I am and then I just blew all this money? And we're not talking a lot of money, to be quite honest. It was like a normal size investment with a coach, several $1,000s, but it was over 6 months. And even by the coach that I hired, I'd known, I trusted her. I knew in my mind and in my heart that I would get benefit from it, but it still was something, it was just a big investment that I saw at the time. And the transformation was that once I started, I felt so vested in my success, my personal success, because it was an investment. And I'm like, oh, I'm not going to screw this up. I am committed. I'm doing the work. I am not canceling any appointments. I'm showing up all the time. I'm checking in. I'm doing everything that I'm supposed to be doing. And by making those small choices every single day and testing myself and just growing a little bit more in between each session and at each session over time, I mean, when I finished, I had a plan. I had a life vision for my life. I knew exactly where I wanted to be. I had carved out what were my goals. What was I going to do within the next 6 to 12 months? The next 12 to 18 months, what was I going to do the next 1 to 3 years? Because in my mind, I was giving myself a couple of years to make the transition from corporate to my own business. So I had the certainty that, okay, here's my plan. And then I just needed to take action. Then I was like, well, I know how to execute anything. So now that I've got a plan, let's just go. And then it was about 2 years that from the time I started to the time I actually left my job and started my career, my
That
new
is
business.
awesome, though.
Yeah.
And that was a smart move, too, because I feel like sometimes we tend to look at it black or white. Like I'm
Oh,
hating my
yes.
job. I don't like it. I'm feeling stuck. I need to quit.
Right.
Versus, like you said, getting the support, having a plan, and utilizing that time and that space as a bridge job, per se. Like you
Yeah.
were just continuing to work with it as you built your business. So that's great. And then you've only had this for years and you're successful. You were able to leave corporate. Talk to us a little bit about this.
Yeah, it was just so interesting. And I just want to backpedal to what you said is it's not a binary decision. It's not, yes or no. I always tell my clients, experiment, take these little chances, try some things. Life is experiential. And so I think that gave me the confidence and it allowed me to grow in my confidence and to start releasing some fears by taking action. And so when I finally said, okay, it's time to go, and I started my business, I already was enrolled in the coaching programs. I already was certified in a couple of things already. I already had some clients that were ready to start working with me because I was communicating this. And so I think because I've started the work earlier while I still was at work in my full-time job, it really gave me some of that courage and to continue to do more. And then year one was really, let's build a foundation. Let's start taking some steps. Let's get some clients. Let's get better at my new craft. And over time, every year I set new goals for myself. Last year was the year that I was going to write and publish a book and launch my podcast, which I did. And so it's like every year, I think I just have, more things on the list strategically for what I want to do. And I think all of that started from that initial coaching program because I saw how to look into the future and then work backwards to figure out the steps to help me get there.
And you have someone that's holding you accountable to
Exactly.
That is so key. Have you continued to invest in your growth with other coaches and mentors? I don't know if you're still with the same coach or you transition.
So my coach is like a soul sister now. My original coach is a good friend of mine. She is definitely someone that is in my life, but more in like a friendship place now. But I've continued to invest in coaching programs, multiple coaching programs every year since I started my business, because there are always going to be people that have done something you're looking for. So for example, last year I hired a podcast coach. I launched my podcast, but I wanted to say, how do I take it to the next level? What are some things I haven't considered? How do I get more people to listen? How do I make it better? All of those things. And so there's always little things, people that specialize in something that you can get additional help for. And sometimes it's one-on-one, sometimes it's a group program where it feels good. I'm in a mastermind right now with about 25 other amazing women. And you get something different even from participating in a mastermind, right? You get, of course, the facilitator, but then you also get these wonderful relationships from the other people who are participating, who are cheerleaders, who are, also on their own journey, and you can help and support one another. So I'm a huge believer in continuing to make that investment.
Yes, that's why I asked you, because I'm the same way. I think the moment I started my business and the veils got pulled up, of like what entrepreneurship can be.
Yeah.
I haven't looked back. I mean, I've spent thousands of dollars in coaching programs, business programs, but the return on investment, because to some people, it might sound like, oh my God, well, where do you have that money? I don't have that money sitting around. You become resourceful, and you figure out how you can pay for it. To me, it's like continuing education. Like if I would have gone to college, the people pay $100,000 for a year in college. So why not do that for yourself and invest in yourself? You're such an example of that, Aneta. I really appreciate you sharing that, because I think many of us, there's so many coaches, mentors, and like you said, we can look into the self-development world and read a book, and we think that that we have that knowledge, but it's not enough. You have to be able to understand and take it, to embed it, to live it, to take action. And that's something you mentioned before. And I want to go further into that. How do you build your confidence? You were talking about taking action and just going for it and doing the things that you want. But how do we build our confidence?
Oh gosh, these are lessons I've learned along the way, right? So I want people to know that these are stepping stones, and that's how I share my own experience. Mindset matters. And so I am a huge firm believer in meditation. It's really changed my life. And so my morning routine and the way I set my day with intention, with meditation, with breath work, with gratitude, with visioning, it sets the tone for the day, and it reminds me of my why. And so we need to have a very strong purpose and a really strong why to anything that we do. If we do, we're going to be more courageous. And even if we're not courageous, we're still going to take a few more chances than if we don't believe in something. So I always say those things are really important. Testing your little muscle every single day. So I say, take tiny bite-sized pieces. You don't have to do something extreme year one. You don't have to do something extreme day one. It's just, what can you do today that is in the direction of where you're going? And just take that tiny little imperfect step. It doesn't have to be perfect. I've let go of, people say, how do you get rid of imposter syndrome? There is no getting rid of it. Everybody has it. It's very natural. And I just reframe it. If I feel like I'm imposter, I just remind myself, well, of course, this feels a little uncomfortable. You haven't done this before. Or of course it feels a little uncomfortable. You haven't done it on this scale. And that's okay. You're going to learn through it. It's not going to be perfect. And next time you do it, it's going to be a little bit better. And so just giving myself a lot more grace. I think in the corporate world, one of the disservice that we've done to ourselves is, my God, I used to do PowerPoint presentations that had sometimes like 46 versions, right? You're like, why do we do that to ourselves? Let's have the conversation. Let's have the dialogue. Let's move in the right direction. And I think with entrepreneurship, I detoxed from a lot of those expectations where I'm like, you know what, this is good enough today. And I think people appreciate a little bit more authenticity, and they appreciate when things aren't perfect. And they appreciate when there's more passion and more energy behind it necessarily than a lot of high gloss. So those were some of the things that I've been practicing and what I've learned along the way in my journey.
Oh, that is so beautifully said. And you've mentioned imposter syndrome and how you've dealt with that, which I
Yeah.
think even the most famous, we look up to celebrities,
Yes.
speakers, all these people, they have gone through it, they go through it, because I'm a big believer, you go to the next level. And like one of my mentors used to say, next level, new devil, and so that
Yes.
it's going to show up. So that there's no way. I love that you said you're not going to get rid of it. It's
Yeah.
just, how do we deal with it?
And Tanya, I completely agree. And it's so nice reading articles about people like Michelle Obama, who I adore. And I think she's amazing. She's talked about having it. Oprah Winfrey. You look at so many people, idols who are successful, that feel like imposters. But think about, words matter. If we didn't have the phrase or these words that we internalize so deeply, I think we would be a little bit easier on ourselves. And I always use the example of kids. Kids don't fall off their bike and say, oh, I have imposter syndrome. Or the first time they keep falling when they're learning to walk, right? They don't have this language. They just are trying a new skill, and they do it over and over and over again until they get better. And then they're more confident and more courageous. And then parents even have to hold them back so they don't hurt themselves, right? Well, we've almost gone to the other side of the pendulum. We're so worried about making a mistake that we even like internalize this term, which makes us even more paralyzed with fear and keeps us stuck. And I just say, get rid of the term. Don't say that. Reframe it and go, yeah, of course it's uncomfortable. It's new. I've never done it before, but guess what? That's okay. It's okay. It's natural.
You've just hit on so many points with that we all go through. What about perfectionism with it? Because I feel
Oh,
like it's kind of tied in, like how do
yeah.
you deal with perfectionism and having things,
Yes.
be good, like good enough instead of
Yeah.
having to be perfect?
I think living through things that probably would have like broken me in the past has helped. Like I remember the first time I sent an email and the link was broken or there was a typo, the old me
Yeah.
like beat myself up so much. And guess what? There weren't a bunch of people who unsubscribed. There weren't a bunch of people calling me and saying, oh my gosh, this happened. I caught it myself. And so the world didn't end. It was okay. And then I was like, okay, what can I put in place to make sure that this doesn't happen next time? So I learned from it. And so I think with the perfectionism is I just try to let it go and remind myself it will never be perfect. And many successful people talk about this all the time. And each time there is a mistake, and even one that's bigger, that of course we don't feel good about when it impacts somebody else, I always say, what can I learn from it? Focus on what I can do. What am I going to change as a result of it? And then let the other part go. Because there's no benefit to putting our energy on regretting it. The benefit goes putting the energy towards what you're going to do next time instead.
So perfect. And so Greatly said. You were talking about perfectionism, but it was so perfectly said, Aneta, like just
Oh,
let
thanks.
go of it. It's
Yeah.
such a reminder. And don't you find that you get relief from it when you're letting go of it instead of beating ourselves up so much of like what could
Yes.
have done, we could have done, how we could have done it. I love all these subjects because I feel like they're so universal, and especially for
Yes.
women, of
Mhm.
just wanting to do everything. And you have such great perspective on all of them. So I want to ask you about another one that shows up a lot
Mm.
that I see with my clients, colleagues, for myself,
Mm.
comparisonitis, when
Yes.
especially with social media, of like,
Yes.
oh my God, she's doing so and so, and they're doing this thing, and she already launched her podcast, and they did, it's like, I,
Yes.
how do you react? What do you do to not compare yourself with others?
So this is definitely something that I continue to always remind myself. So I do a lot of, as I talked about, my morning routine and my talk and journaling and all these things. But so this answer is going to be one that's very spiritual. So my belief is that every single one of us is here on a mission. We are here on our own journey. We have something to learn, a lot of things to learn, and then we have something to give and to serve and share back with the world. And so, with that belief, I believe that there is room for everybody. And there's no way that any one person, you or me or Oprah or anyone else, is going to be able to impact every single person on the planet. But it requires every single one of us to show up as the best version of ourselves and to do our part. So I support and I acknowledge and I applaud all the other people who are also doing their part, and I use them for inspiration, and I use them as support, and I use them as accountability buddies. And what is the expression? Rising tides raise the boats. So I really spend time thinking about and reminding myself that it takes every single one of us. And when someone else shows up and does a good job, it is so much better to say, well done, and then say, ooh, how can I use that to inspire me to do my part? But it doesn't have to be like theirs. We're all here with different experiences and talents and gifts. It's not going to be the same. And that has just given me a sense of such relief. And it just feels better to have that perspective. For me, not everyone may agree with that, but then there is no comparison, because it's like, of course their experience is different than mine, because I'm different and they're different, and all of these other things that have come before us is different, and maybe our journeys are different, and who we're supposed to serve is different. So it just, that's what works for me.
That's a great perspective. But has it happened to you? Like, for example, I don't know, you walk into a networking event or something, like,
Uh-huh.
because I'm hearing, my audience's voice right now in my head, like,
Mm-hmm.
well, yeah, that's, very like taking the higher ground and very spiritual, but I'm stuck in a networking event. I just came in, and I'm a real estate agent, and so is this other person. They're a real estate agent. They're going to take business away from me, like,
Mm.
and how would you respond to something like that? Like if someone shows up at a
Yeah.
networking event and you're a coach and they're a coach, and you're
Yeah.
like, how do you deal with the niggly nagglies in your brain?
So I heard this phrase during my yoga teacher training. And when we talked about, there's so many yoga teachers everywhere, right? And my teacher shared something, and I don't think she coined it, but she said, your vibe attracts your tribe. So when
Mm.
you are authentically yourself and you are standing in your truth, your power, your authenticity, your energy is going to be so bright and shiny that the people who need you, your special sauce, are going to naturally gravitate to you. And the people who need the other are going to naturally gravitate towards them. And I have found this over and over and over again to be true. I do work with an organization where I also do some coaching on a contract basis. And there's a whole group of us, a bench of coaches, and we do chemistry calls with people. And I've said sometimes to people, like, I don't, if you're looking for a strict business coach who's only going to focus on your leadership development or whatever, I'm not your person, but I know who is. But if you're looking for transformational coaching, looking at the entire package, and you're open to East meets West, modalities and all this stuff, I'm your person. But so it's okay to know what makes you you, and then allow your energy to shine through and to bring the right people towards you. I really do believe that. I know people might think that sounds crazy, but anytime I've tried to be someone other than myself, it doesn't work. And when I'm just myself, people naturally who are looking for that are going to come to me. And people who aren't are going to go to someone else who's going to do a great job taking care of them.
Yeah, that's such a great reminder, because I think sometimes we just get caught up in our head
We
instead of
do.
just focusing on ourselves and the value that we provide, and that we have a certain energy that we're emanating that's going to be
Yes.
completely different to someone else.
And Tanya, like, think about it. I drive 45 minutes to get my hair cut by this woman that I followed, right? I followed her when she was somewhere closer to me. She moved further away. She has less hours. I still work with her over the last 10 years. I'm sure that there's someone that can cut my hair within a 5-mile radius, but I don't want to find someone else. I like Diana. That's who I go to, and she's my girl, right? So I think it's similar with anything else too. It's like you're going to find the person that you connect with and who your energies are aligned. And that's where you're going to go. That's who people gravitate towards.
Such a great example, because we can all relate to the
Right.
hairdresser or to the
Yes.
masseuse or to the
Yes.
person that does your nails. It's like,
Exactly.
no, I would never trade them for, I'll drive, 100
Yes.
miles if I have to.
Because it's not transactional. These are not transactional experiences. These are life connections with people. That's why it matters to show up as who you are, so that the right people find you and you find the right people.
Yeah, that was what a great example. And I appreciate that.
Yeah.
So this is all about the courage to be.
Yeah.
And what do you say to yourself when the fears show up, they're bubbling up, you have to do something that's uncomfortable, but there's going to be a reward on the other side.
Yeah.
You're like, I don't know how to do this. Can I, like you start
Yes.
questioning it. What do you tell yourself? What do you say to yourself?
So I will use a very recent example that happened. It was probably 2 weeks ago. I think this happened. So in my mastermind, I saw so many women that were in my group that would go daily. They would do Instagram lives. And I'd never done an Instagram live. Like, the idea of it just gave me like heart palpitations. And I wasn't sure if and I record videos all the time. So it's not like I worry about recording a video and putting it out there. And I'm not, so I didn't know what it was, but it definitely was a fear and irrational. And so what I did is we in breath work, we do these things called feelers, where you reach out to somebody within the group and you say, I'm struggling with something and I could use a feeler. And what we do is, the other person, you connect, you do it on Zoom, you can see each other, you kind of ground down into the body, you connect to the energy, and the person shares, like I would share, I'm feeling a lot of queasiness in my stomach right now, and I'm feeling a little bit of tightness in my heart and my chest, and it feels constricting. And so it's naming what you're feeling and allowing the other person to hold space for it. And it diffuses the fear when you do that. And then there might be some words of encouragement. And then I just took action. I was like, I'm doing it right now. And I went live and I did 2 of them and in a row, like 2 days in a row. And I recognized I don't fear doing it. I've done it, but it doesn't energetically align with what feels good to me. So I don't have to do it. But so it was sort of naming the fear, walking through it, sitting with it, not resisting it, allowing somebody else to provide support for me, and then taking action, because you got to face it. Like, the more we resist it, the more the fear grows. And when you're able to take action on it in a way that feels safe to you, and when you feel safe to do it, it suddenly is like, oh, I don't really fear that anymore. It wasn't quite as scary as it was. So that's like a real life example. Maybe some people aren't scared of doing lives, but that was one that came to mind for me. So I do that all the time. And then I have affirmations that I write for myself. I go back and I read them and I like write them down, and I do all the work to just kind of build new neural pathways and get myself unstuck. Those are the things that seem to work for me.
That's great. Thank you for sharing your steps of going through
Yeah,
that. I was going to ask you about breath work and I'll come back to
yeah.
action too. Share with us because you're saying that you're doing breath work to anyone that might be new that's never heard the term breath work.
Mhm.
What is it? How can we use it? How did you get into it?
Yeah. So breath work is it's under the umbrella of meditation. However, what I found, so in yoga, it's called pranayama, and it really is controlled breath work where we are taking our breath and we are manipulating it to either breathe quicker or slower or changing the pace of it. And what you're doing is actually moving your nervous system from the sympathetic, which is the fight or flight or freeze, into the parasympathetic, which is the rest and digest. And breath work also stimulates the vagus nerve, which is the largest nerve in the body. That sends about 80% of the signals to the brain. And when we are under sustained periods of stress, it's very difficult for the body to self-regulate and to bring us back into coherence, into the parasympathetic. We kind of stay in that emotional state for too long. So that's how breath work works. And it's been around for thousands of years, so many different types of breath work. The one that I just got certified in is a trauma-informed somatic breath work, which is a very active breath. And there are different types of breath patterns, and some are calming and grounding, and some are more activating that actually can really help you to release trauma and to move energy throughout the body. And the way I got informed was I was at an event at a retreat in California last year, and Sam Skelly, who's the CEO of Pause Breathwork, did a breathwork program. Like, she facilitated a session for us. It was probably at least 30 minutes or longer. And I just had such an emotional reaction and response, like nothing I've ever felt before, that I signed up to enlist in her program the very next morning. Like, I just couldn't believe what happened within me. And I thought, okay, this is going to help me with my own journey. And then I want to be able to bring it to other people as well. And so I started last October, finished in April, and then now I'm continuing on with many of those women in the mastermind as well. And it's been amazing. So if you're looking to reduce stress, to calm down, to regulate your nervous system, to move through trauma, to work, do some inner child work, all of that can be impacted through controlled breathing.
That is fabulous. Yeah, I've just scratched the surface with breath work. So I
Yeah.
love hearing this. And not everyone's familiar with this and the many great benefits that breath work can provide. Like you're
Yes.
saying, like dealing with trauma, stress relief, like just all of these different things. So thanks for sharing that.
Sure.
I wanted to go back to action, because you have so
Yeah.
many golden nuggets. I'm like, oh my God, I can't keep up with her awesome knowledge and teachings with it. So you mentioned action when I was asking you about, mustering up the courage and overcoming our
Yes.
fears. Like you have to take action at some point because
Yes.
if not, you're just in fight or flight or freeze, so you'll be in
Yes.
freeze if you don't take action. And that's great. What about action with intuition? Like, how do you tie that?
Mm.
Because you're mentioning your morning practices and that you
Mhm.
do your breath work, you do your meditations. And I feel like when we meditate, or at least for me, when I meditate, I get these like
Yes.
intuitive hits, call them
Yes.
whatever you want, downloads, you're connecting
Downloads.
with your higher self, you're connecting with spirit, God,
Yes.
whatever you want. To me, it's a connection with my intuition. Do you take action right away when you get those hits or those downloads?
I do now. And I agree with you, Tanya. For me, when I sit in my meditation, I do my breath work, I am in alignment. Like, I feel like I am so aligned to source, to God. And I do then feel like I'm these hits or these downloads that you talked about. And the more that one practices this way, the more one starts to trust their intuition. We are so busy doing all the time that these little still quiet voice now then has to be like, we have to get hit over the head sometimes in order to pay attention. And I think the more you practice being still and being quiet, even though the mind never really quiets too much, the more you can tap in and listen and hear. And so I do. And so often I'll text someone or I'll call someone and go, hey, I was just thinking of you. And they're like, oh my God, how did you do that? They're like, I was just going to pick up the phone. And I'm like, I just had that. Or, I do this every morning before I teach meditation, and I rely on my downloads to tell me what the group needs. And you can ask for these answers of your highest self, of your spirit, of God, or whatever it is that you believe in. And it's amazing when you tap into it and you create the container and the space in order to be able to listen, what you're able to hear. So I do take action. And I found that the times where I don't take action, I'll continue to get those downloads, and sometimes they won't be as gentle until I'm ready to take action. Yeah.
It's like the big wake up call, like, here,
Yes.
I've been trying to reach you,
Trying to get your attention.
Yeah. Do you have any stories that from anything that you took action besides like the phone call? Like, I believe that all those synchronicities tend to happen. And I always love listening to stories like, yeah, I was just sitting, with the sun hitting me on the face. Like, maybe you weren't even in meditation. Maybe you were in meditation, but that you took immediate action, even though it sounded weird or scary. Any stories for you?
I have two, and they're very different. So one was one of those that just kind of fell. I would say it was probably a couple of years ago in my business, and I was sitting outside, and it was a beautiful day, and I just had this urge to record just a little video on my phone of, here's who I am, here's what I'm doing, here's the clients that I serve, etc. And I posted it, and from that tiny little video, I had 5 clients book with me within like a week. It was the craziest thing. And and I said, where did you hear? And they're like, well, I watched your video and it just reached me at the right time. So it was one of those things that just was all aligned, and there was no master plan. I didn't redo it. It was just like a fast download here, speak from the heart, and the right people found it. But the one where I was more channeling the intuition was, I wrote my book and I wanted to get it out before the end of the year, and I knew I needed to find an editor, and I didn't know anybody that could help me. And so I went to Upworks, and I literally like closed my eyes, did a meditation, and was like, okay, I need divine intervention here to tell me who my editor is going to be. And I do not have time to sift through 65,000, right? I mean, it could be very overwhelming. And I found the very first profile that kind of came to me, that sort of spoke to me. I read his profile and I said, can you meet? I need to talk to you immediately, because I wanted like a connection to see if this was the right thing. And he was the very first person that I worked with, and he's fantastic. And I will always work with George on any other book or things that we're doing. But it was like, that was more of a directive intuition. Like, I need you to show me where to go, because this is overwhelming and I need this person to literally drop into my lap. And so that one worked out really well too.
I love that distinction though, like a directive intuition, so that you can get those answers. Like you're saying, whether it's you're about to teach a class and tuning into that and saying, okay, what does the class need, versus going into our left brain and saying, okay, this is how we have to do. And we go all mechanical, and that's the strategy. That's how I planned it, and there's no room for, no, let's tune in today and see where it takes us. But that's a hard thing to do, Aneta. Like, to me, I think it's a hard thing to do for those of us that can be more left brain, more controlling. Because to me, I feel like I have to control the situations. And it's just a form of insecurity. I'm very aware of that. It's like being able to control, like, I'll give you an example. Like, when I started the podcast, I thought I was going to have everything written out and I'd have all my questions, because that gave me a sense of control as to where to take the podcast, versus saying, you know what? No, I'm just going to go organically and see where it takes us. That takes a level of trust and of faith of connecting with that intuition, like you're saying. But I love that you have connecting with your intuition, like just tuning in the situation, like,
Yeah.
okay, what's the best thing for the group? I love that you had directive intuition, like
Yeah.
I need this now.
Right.
And then just allowing intuition. I guess we'll just
Yeah.
call it allowing because I'm not quite
Yes.
sure what to
Yeah.
call
I love
this.
that. Allowing, receiving, being open, right? Receptive.
Yeah.
Yeah.
How much of this, because this takes us to the topic of trust and faith.
Mm-hmm.
How do you feel about that? Like, because for you to go in and say, I need an editor, it requires a certain level of trust of like, okay, I know I'm connected
Yeah.
and I'm going to get my answer in the next hour.
Mhm.
I don't have time to be spending.
Yes.
How do you tap into that trust?
I think it goes back to practice. It's like, I think before I left my job, I always said that I had faith, but I didn't put it in practice. Like I still allowed my fears to be stronger than my faith. And then once I chose to leave, it was the day that my faith was greater than my fears. And I believe that it's practicing, and maybe trust is the word. You start to trust and allow. And I've recognized over time that when I get out of my own way, things tend to work out better if I'm aligned. And so my job is to be committed to my practices that I know work, to stay aligned continuously, to bring myself back when I lose my way, to reset, and then get out of the way. Like do the work, do all the good stuff that is within my control, and to allow the things that are not within my control to really be handled by something larger than myself. Once again, that works for me, but I don't know that I would be able to do all the things that I did if I didn't have that sense of sort of certainty and faith and something larger than just me. To me, it's really allows me, it takes the pressure off. I'm like, I don't have to figure it all out myself. It really, for me, is a lot easier to let go of some of that control. And I've dealt with control issues my entire life. Like I've always tried to be in control. And when you start to practice allowing instead, it really, you start to see a little bit of I always say leave room for magic. That's where the magic happens, where you're like,
Yeah.
oh, I let go a little bit. And guess what? Something turned out that it was even cooler and better than I could have planned myself.
Oh, you couldn't have said it better. That is awesome, Aneta. Thank you for
Yeah.
that. Yeah. There's such a difference of living in that space of magic and possibility versus I have
Yes.
to control it and it has to be my way, So
Yeah.
thanks for that reminder. Where can people find you, Aneta?
Oh my goodness, I made it easy. So I am definitely on all the social channels. My podcast is everywhere, but I'm going to direct your audience if they would like to my website. And I created a place just for them. So it is anetakuzma.com/courage to be. And I will include that. I have a couple of different URLs. I'll include that directly in your show notes for folks to find it. And I've included some special offers for your audience. I will be offering some breathwork classes that they could register for free to experience breathwork because I believe so strongly in the power. And so I'll include some links to register. And then also if they want to maybe recommit or start a meditation practice in the morning, also a week of free meditation. I do a live class Monday through Saturdays. And so I'll include a way for them to access that. And then of course, they'll have links to the book and the podcast and everything else that's available as well.
Oh, wow. Thank you. Thanks for your generosity. That's
Yeah.
awesome. I'll
Yes.
look into that too. So before we wrap up, what are 2 quick practical action steps that you would recommend our listeners to live a life with more courage?
Oh, great. I did a fear exercise that like my year 1 in business, and Tim Ferriss actually talks about it on his TED Talk. And it really is listing all of your fears down, get them out of your head, put them on paper. And then in the next column, write down, is this a high, medium, or low risk? Really, and identify that. Then what can I do to minimize the risk? What are some steps that I can do to actually minimize this from actually happening? And then the final question that you go through is, what if the complete opposite were true? What if the complete opposite happens? So if someone has a fear of not making money in their new business, what then the complete opposite is that they make more money than ever before. They're able to do all these wonderful things. It gives them freedom, all of that. When you go through that, you enter into the frontal lobe of the brain, you are starting to really think more critically, and you're able to not respond from an emotional perspective. So I would say that's the first exercise. And then start taking those little baby action steps in that column where you wrote, what can I do to minimize it? Pick the smallest thing that you can do today, take the step, celebrate your progress, celebrate it, and then continue on.
That is awesome. Thanks so much for your
You're
time, Aneta.
welcome.
This was great.
You're
Thank you.
welcome, Tanya. I am so grateful for our time together, and I love your podcast and all the great work you're doing in the world. So I celebrate you.
Thank you.
I am so grateful that you joined me today. If you enjoyed it, there's one thing I'd like you to do. Click on the follow button so you don't miss a single episode. Leave me a rating and a review, and please share. As my way to thank you, email us a screen grab of your review at the email in the show notes, and we will send you a free Crafting Your Future guided visualization, which is so simple to do with outstanding results. It will empower you and give you the confidence to attract and create the life you've always desired. See you in our next episode.